This is South Ogden, a small city in Weber County, Utah. Situated in a residential neighborhood, just a 4-minute drive from the busy thoroughfare of Washington Boulevard, is 3636 Ogden Avenue. Back in 2016, the residence was home to 24-year-old construction worker Carl Van Komen. Described as a free spirit with a fierce loyalty to family and friends, Carl was a charismatic and authentic young man who loved nothing more than spending time with the people he cared about most, exploring nature and indulging in his greatest passion, ice hockey. At the time, Carl was renting 3636 with his brother Brock, their stepbrother, and their friend Jay. Known as something of a party palace by locals, the house had attracted police attention twice for noise offences, but for the most part, all of the tenants got along well with their neighbours, especially with the man who lived alone in 3630, their immediate neighbour, 61-year-old Kevin Nelson, a former local business owner and recent retiree who spent most of his time collecting records, playing guitar, and cheering on the Denver Broncos. Kevin would frequently visit the Van Komen brothers and co. to hang out and share nuggets of wisdom with the young whippersnappers next door, who all playfully referred to him as Grandpa Nelson. "I'm not that old, damn it," Kevin would retort. He and Carl were especially close. Being a social guy himself, Kevin was well liked by all of the other residents on Ogden Avenue, respected for his kind heart and down-to-earth nature. December 9th, 2016 was a freezing cold day in Weber County, with temperatures dropping to -3 degrees Celsius, or about 27 degrees Fahrenheit. By the time the sun set, most people were keeping warm indoors, and at 7 PM, so were all 4 members of 3636 Ogden Avenue. I've read reports that a 5th person, B, was also at the house with them, though the sources are unclear whether he was also a tenant or if he was simply a friend visiting. Regardless, the temperature was low, but spirits in the house were high, and the boys agreed it was worth braving the cold to have some fun on a Friday night. After a few minutes of deliberation, the group decided to go bowling together, though before they set off, Brock and his stepbrother wanted to grab a bite to eat. Not having much disposable cash to begin with, and wanting to save the little they had for Christmas gifts, the pair opted to buy some Hot Pockets from a nearby store. They set off at 7:45 PM, leaving Kyle, Jay, and B behind at the house. Around that same time, Kevin Nelson was walking home after a get-together with some local friends. Hearing that his neighbours were inside 3636, Kevin wandered over and was duly welcomed inside by Kyle. What happened next is every sibling's worst nightmare. Brock and his stepbrother returned from the store just 10 minutes later, and somehow, in that brief window of time, all hell had broken loose inside 3636 Ogden Avenue. In the living room, they found their brother, Kyle, and their neighbour, Kevin, lying in pools of blood, both having been shot, one of them execution style. Their killer, or killers, were nowhere to be seen. Lying in the snow-laden backyard was 20-year-old Jay, whose name's been withheld for his security. He had been shot through the neck, but was still alive. Little information has been publicly revealed about B. He either managed to escape the scene or had left the house just before the slaughter began, but either way, the authorities don't consider him a suspect in the case. Help was summoned at 7:58 PM. Brock then called his father, Jerry John, and told him that Kyle was gone. Their father asked how he knew that. Brock replied, "Because he's in my arms." Medics arrived shortly thereafter and pronounced Kyle and Kevin DOA. Jay was rushed to a local hospital for treatment. That evening, police locked down the area around the crime scene, halting traffic in the neighborhood and conducting a door-to-door canvass for information. Surprisingly, none of their neighbors heard or saw anything. Officers searched neighboring yards throughout most of the night, expanding their search until the morning hours. Crime scene investigators remained on the property until Saturday evening, scouring each room for evidence. Several casings from a 9mm were collected for examination. A number of footprint impressions were identified, and a bloody fingerprint impression was found on the front door. Jay would thankfully make a full physical recovery, but told officers that he didn't recognize any of the intruders, nor had he ever heard any of their voices before. He did, however, describe how they had approached him while he was smoking outside in the backyard, catching him off guard just before they stormed the property. He recalled they were demanding money. and then everything went black. Investigators believe that at least one of the housemates, likely Kyle, was specifically targeted by these unknown assailants. They initially had a suspect in mind too, one who lived near the Van Komen household, but this individual had a watertight alibi. As mentioned, the Van Komen house had a reputation for being a party pad, and it was no secret that their friends would often go there to drink beer and smoke dope. This was never anything serious, and none of the housemates sold anything illicit, only indulged in it recreationally, but South Ogden PD knew that a potential tipster might be worried about coming forward because of that. If someone with information is reluctant to come forward because they participated in less serious offences, either at the home or with the victims, know that we are focused on homicide. Do not let concern about a prior potential offence keep you from coming forward. We're not concerned about it, and neither should you be. Despite their pleas for information though, few leads presented themselves. 4 days after the incident, the authorities released the most crucial and unsettling evidence that they had come across in a press release. 3 video clips captured from external security cameras around 3636 Ogden Avenue. The first piece of footage shows the 3 suspects lurking in the darkness outside the Van Komen household. Suspect 1 appears to be a tall and slim man, dressed in a light-coloured jacket, light pants, a hat, and what's been described as a paintball mask, with a duffel bag slung over his shoulder and a gun in his hand. Suspect 2 wears a thicker, light-coloured coat, dark snow trousers, a darker mask, and a backpack. Based on their stature and mannerisms, this could be a female, but let me know what you think down below. Suspect 3, seemingly another male, donned a darker outfit, a plastic mask, and what appears to be a light-coloured neck gaiter or equivalent covering. Unfortunately, there are no timestamps to go along with any of these recordings, so it's not known how quickly the 3 masked invaders struck after Brock and his stepbrother left the scene, but the authorities have since stated that the trio had been staking out the home for at least an hour before the incident. The next clip shows Suspect 1 peering in through the property's windows, observing their soon-to-be victims' movements. Suspect 2 joins Suspect 1. Suspect 3's position at this point is unknown. The 2 voyeurs make their way to the back of the property. According to the police, this final video was captured shortly after Carl and Kevin had been slain. In it, we can see a vehicle drive down the road. It's not clear whether this was Brock and his stepbrother returning from the store, a getaway vehicle for the suspects to escape in, or a vehicle unrelated to the case, but law enforcement opted to include it in their press release, so it may be significant. Seconds after the vehicle passes, Suspect 1 leaps over a fence, looks up and down the road, places something inside his bag, and jumps back over the fence the way he had come. law enforcement were hopeful that by releasing these images, someone would recognize the three suspects. And yet, nobody did. "It's frustrating that there's so much evidence, as we can't find them," said Carl's mother, Renee Finch, though she's also expressed her gratitude that Brock and his stepbrother were out at the time of the incident. "We're very thankful that we didn't lose all three of our boys that night." Since there are so few details about this case online, I'd like to try and analyze these clips in more detail. This is a satellite view of the area where the crime unfolded. Running horizontally along the bottom is Ogden Avenue, and horizontally along the top is Adams Avenue. 36th Street and 37th Street run perpendicular. Highlighted here is 3636 Ogden Avenue, aka the crime scene. Beside it is Kevin Nelson's property, 3630. According to online sources, the three videos were captured, in order, from Kevin's own security cameras. Looking at the first clip, camera 03 caught the suspects observing 3636 from behind a tree. I've seen a few people online suggest that this may have been one of these two trees, but that's demonstrably untrue. Not only is this area way too open, but you'll notice that the tree in the footage has a split in it, with one thick branch splitting off from the trunk. Neither of these trees are a match. It's more likely that they were observing their targets from this wooded area behind the two houses. This area would have offered them far more cover than any trees by the roadside, and it makes sense that Kevin would have placed a camera at the rear of his property for protection. Going back to our satellite view, you may be able to notice that there's a 200-meter dirt track that runs between the houses on Ogden Avenue's north side and Adams Avenue's south side. I believe the three suspects used this track to approach the property. There wouldn't have been any surveillance cameras along it. The track is also wide enough for a vehicle to drive through. They may have been dropped off at either side, or could have even parked their getaway vehicle somewhere along the track. Next, notice how long suspect 1 stays in a crouch position, and then effortlessly gets up. Not only is he physically fit, but I believe that he and his accomplices were under 30 years old, probably closer to 20. Now look at his mask. Notice how the nose juts out. Ogden PD described this as a paintball mask, but I can't help but wonder whether it's a hockey mask. Given Carl's love for ice hockey, could this have been someone that he encountered on the rink? Camera 02's position is a lot more clear-cut. It was installed on the left side of Kevin Nelson's property. In fact, you can see it right here. Notice how the drainpipe juts out in front of the camera, as it does in the footage. The angle is also the same, focused on the right-hand side of 3636. In the footage, suspects 1 and 2 emerge from the back of the property, confirming, in my mind, that they were observing the house from the wooded area in the rear. Suspect 3 doesn't appear in the footage. He or she may have been the designated getaway driver and was waiting for the accomplices inside the vehicle. Jay also mentioned that he was held up by the intruders in the backyard area. Suspect 3 may have been holding Jay there, whilst 1 and 2 spied through the windows. The third clip shows suspect 1 jumping a fence after the slayings. The suspect's mask is clearly lifted up at this point and resting atop his head, giving us a very vague impression of his facial features. A very bold or very stupid move. I've enhanced a few stills here, and though it's difficult to make much out, the suspect appears to have a large or long nose. Judging by how he looks up and down the road and stands around in an unsure fashion, I believe suspect 1 was looking for someone at this point. Following this clip, the three accomplices presumably escaped together. It's worth noting that US Route 89, a major highway, runs alongside Ogden Avenue and would have allowed the gang of three to put some quick distance between themselves and the crime scene. But this is where things take a turn. You see, according to online sources, this third video, like the other two, was captured by a camera on Kevin Nelson's property, 3630 Ogden Avenue. But I can prove that's not the case. Note the two small horizontal windows that run along the lower portion of this building. Neither of the victims' homes have those. Then there's the way that this lighter section juts out slightly from the darker, lower section. The white panelling on this house with the camera. The roof shapes. The fence that the suspect leaps over. The chain link fence that runs between the two houses. this dry, bush-like feature, the tire tracks, the position of the homes opposite, the fact that this footage lacks a camera number in the bottom right like the other two videos. All of the elements are different. This video was 100% recorded by a surveillance camera on a different house in the area. That means suspect 1 ran somewhere else after the incident. But where? I spent hours exploring the length and breadth of Ogden Avenue, searching for a pair of houses that matched these two to figure out where the footage was captured. I wanted to find 2 adjacent homes that matched those in the third video. Thankfully, all of the homes are idiosyncratic, with distinct and unique features, but even after scrutinizing all of them, I just couldn't find a match. I went to bed feeling a little deflated, but that following morning, I realized I may have been searching the wrong place. One road across from Ogden, on the opposite side of the track, you'll find 3677 and 3683 Adams Avenue. Notice how all of their elements are exactly the same as those seen in the security footage. The windows, the slight jutting of the house, the white paneling, the shape of the roofs, the chain link fence, the same dry bushes, the tire tracks, the homes opposite. This is most definitely where the third clip was recorded. And the camera? It's right there. I've mapped it, and we now know that suspect 1 ran 160 meters and leapt 3 fences immediately after raiding Carl's home. He then stood looking up and down Adams Avenue for the better part of 30 seconds, and then returned the way he had come. But why? Well, I have a few ideas. Please bear in mind, this is all speculative, and I'd love to hear your theories too, so please, leave them in the comments. Scenario 1. We know the home invasion began after Brock and his stepbrother left for the store, so the trio either took that opportunity to strike because the tenants no longer had a strong numbers advantage, or because the suspects didn't want Brock and or his stepbrother present during the incident. Maybe because one of them would have recognized them, for example. As we know, Brock and his stepbrother were only gone for 10 minutes. The entire raid was conducted in that extremely brief window of time. Assuming there were a few minutes of observation, discussion, and hesitation before the breach, it may well have only lasted a few minutes. So, picture this. The trio are startled by Brock's sudden reappearance. His vehicle pulls up outside the property. Fight or flight kicks in, and the 3 suspects scatter out the back entrance like rats on a sinking ship. In a panic, suspect 2 and 3 take off in their getaway vehicle, leaving suspect 1 stranded and alone. He then makes his way along this dirt track and calls or messages his accomplices for a pickup. He hears a car pass along Adams Avenue and leaps the fence to check if it's his comrades. While he nervously stands around, suspects 2 and 3 come to their senses and message him to meet them back on the track. If correct, the vehicle in this footage may have been them returning to the west entrance of said track. In this scenario, Brock and his stepbrother missed the intruders by seconds. Scenario 2. The plan initially was just to hold Carl and his roommates up and steal their money, dope, or both. Inside though, something goes wrong. The tenants resist, or won't comply, or Kyle recognizes one of them, or nerves get the better of them. Whatever the reason, suspect 1 ends up shooting someone. In a panic, suspect 2 and 3 scatter, leaving suspect 1 to fend for himself. 1 finishes off the remaining victims, realizes he's been abandoned, and tries to make contact with his partners in crime. He's then picked up, or flees on foot. I personally do think it's possible that Carl tried to protect his friends, prompting someone to open fire. As his uncle would later state, Kyle would stand up for people. If someone took a run at someone, he would be right there. He was only 5'5" or 5'6", but he acted like he was 7 feet tall in those situations. Scenario 3. There was a 4th accomplice, a designated getaway driver, but he wasn't waiting in the correct location after the raid. Suspect 1 went looking for him, while suspects 2 and 3 waited on the track. Scenario 4. The reports vary. Many of them mention B, the friend or other tenant, being present at 3636 when the raid occurred. B reportedly escaped the scene on foot without being hit. If true, then this footage could have an even darker context. Namely, that Suspect 1 was attempting to hunt down B before he could get away and summon help. Unable to find him, Suspect 1 returned to his accomplices. If we can get some confirmation whether B was at the house when this all went down, I'd be inclined to call this the most likely explanation. The last thing I want to examine is the vehicle that drives along Adams Avenue. Depending on whether it was the suspect's getaway vehicle or not, completely changes the context of the video. Interestingly, we get a decent look at its silhouette when it passes in front of this white car. Judging by its outline, it appears to be a dark-coloured 4x4 truck. You can make out the front portion, which dips down into the bed here. Revisiting the Van Komen household on Google Maps, we can see that in August 2015, a black or dark grey Nissan Titan was parked in their driveway. The fact that a very similar vehicle passes along Adams Avenue in this footage is striking to me. It could of course be a coincidence, with a fellow neighbour or passerby having a similar looking truck, but if this vehicle in the driveway belonged to Brock Van Komen or his stepbrother, then this footage could show the two returning from the store moments after the suspects fled the house. Indeed, one of the perps may have asked the victims where Brock and his stepbrother had gone, and when told that they'd popped to so-and-so store for a minute, Suspect 1 may have gone on the lookout. There is, however, another possibility. That the truck in this footage didn't belong to Brock or his stepbrother, but was the same one parked outside 3636 on Google Maps, making it the vehicle of one of the boys' friends or former friends. Someone who'd come to visit them in August 2015. Someone who drove the getaway vehicle in December 2016. Perhaps the vehicle of one of these three. I'm just spitballing scenarios, as there's very little footage to work with and few theories being discussed online, but given that Suspect 1 leapt the fence of a property so far from 3636, I'm confident that there was at least some confusion in the aftermath of the massacre. Unlike the POI in Scott Radigan's case, I don't believe these people are particularly intelligent. They'd be in their 30s now, and I'd wager that in all that time, at least one of them has talked about this event to somebody, maybe bragged about how they robbed homes in the South Ogden area in their 20s. Unfortunately, the investigation into this case has stagnated, and the police are still hesitant to release more information to avoid compromising the case. Though Kevin Nelson was likely in the wrong place at the wrong time, investigators remain confident that the three perps knew either Carl Van Komen or one of his housemates, and were prepared to end their lives for material gain. They also believe that someone must know who they are, or at least have some information to share. If that's you, you've been silent for 7.5 years. It's time to speak up. You don't owe these people anything, but you do owe Carl and Kevin's families the truth. Help bring them closure by contacting the South Ogden PD. You can even do so anonymously at southogdencity.com. The information you share, however small, could be the lead detectives are waiting for. Prior to Carl's slaying, his father JJ would leave the family's porch light on until all of his younger children were home. Now they want it left on all the time for Kyle. "To this day, they won't let us turn the light off," said JJ. "So I'm hoping that once this is solved, that porch light can be turned off."